The message came through at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was finishing up the Henderson kitchen renovation. My phone buzzed against the sawdust-covered workbench, and I almost ignored it. Almost. Spending the week at Dad's, he needs help with his medications and doctor appointments. Don't wait up. V. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my grip tightening on the phone. Vivian's father lived in a luxury assisted living facility with round-the-clock nursing staff. The man hadn't needed help with medication since 2019, and his doctor appointments were handled by the facility's transportation service. "Send him my best," I typed back, keeping my tone neutral. But my mind was already racing. My name is Eliot Whitman, though everyone calls me Eli. I've been married to Vivian for 12 years, and I've been suspicious for the last 6 months. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I pay attention. When your wife starts working late 3 nights a week, takes mysterious phone calls in the bathroom, and suddenly develops an interest in expensive lingerie that never makes an appearance at home, you notice. I packed up my tools methodically, the way I do everything. Measure twice, cut once. That's not just carpentry advice. It's a life philosophy. And right now, I was measuring Vivian's lie against everything I knew about her father's situation. The drive home to our lake house took 20 minutes through the winding New England back roads. October had painted the trees in brilliant reds and golds, but I barely noticed. My mind was focused on the iPad Vivian had left charging on the kitchen counter that morning. She'd been in such a hurry to leave for work that she'd forgotten it entirely. Our house sat on the north shore of Millfield Lake, a sprawling 2-story colonial I'd renovated myself over the past 5 years. Smart locks, security cameras, integrated home automation, I'd installed it all. What Vivian didn't know was that I'd kept administrative access to everything, including her devices when they connected to our home network. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at the house we'd built together. The late afternoon sun reflected off the lake, casting dancing patterns on the windows. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. Inside, I went straight to the kitchen and picked up Vivian's iPad. It unlocked with my thumbprint, a feature I'd set up years ago for convenience when we shared grocery lists and calendars. Convenient indeed. Her message history painted a very different picture than the dutiful daughter narrative she'd sold me. The most recent conversation was with someone named Gavin Price, a name I'd never heard her mention. Can't wait for our week at the resort. Bungalow 23 is going to be perfect. Already packed. Told E I'm at Dad's. He bought it completely. Poor guy has no idea what he's missing. See you at 6? The timestamp showed the conversation had taken place this morning, right around the time she'd kissed me goodbye and promised to call tonight to check in. I set the iPad down carefully and walked to my home office, a small room overlooking the lake that Vivian rarely entered. She called it my cave and showed no interest in the electronics and paperwork that filled the built-in shelves. From a locked drawer, I pulled out a small device about the size of a matchbox. A GPS tracker, military grade, with a 2-week battery life. I'd bought it 6 months ago when my suspicions first started, but I'd never had the courage to use it. Today, courage wasn't the issue. Necessity was. Vivian's car was still in the driveway. She'd taken an Uber to wherever she was really going. I slipped outside and attached the tracker to the undercarriage, hidden behind the rear wheel well. Then I returned to my office and activated the monitoring software on my laptop. The tracker showed Vivian's phone location in real time. She wasn't at her father's assisted living facility in Hartford. She was at the couple's retreat resort in the Berkshires, about 90 minutes north of our house. I leaned back in my chair and laughed, though there wasn't much humor in it. The couple's retreat resort. The irony was almost too perfect. Vivian was at a relationship counseling resort with another man while lying to her husband about caring for her father. But who was Gavin Price? A quick internet search revealed a LinkedIn profile for a financial consultant based in Boston. Mid-40s, expensive suit in his profile photo, the kind of smooth confidence that came from never being told no. His company specialized in discretionary wealth management for high-net-worth individuals. I dug deeper, cross-referencing his name with Vivian's company directory. Bingo. Gavin Price Consulting had been contracted by Vivian's firm for a process optimization project that started 8 months ago, right around the time Vivian's behavior had changed. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone rang, interrupting my research. The caller ID showed Vivian's number. "Hi, honey." Her voice was bright and cheerful, with just the right note of exhaustion. "Just wanted to check in. Dad's having a rough day, so I might be here longer than expected." "That's too bad," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Anything I can do to help?" No. You know how he is about strangers. It's better if family handles it. I should go. The nurse wants to discuss his medication schedule." "Of course. Give him my love." "I will. Love you too." The line went quiet, and I stared at my laptop screen. The GPS tracker showed her location hadn't moved from the resort. She just lied to me with the same ease most people use to discuss the weather. I opened a new browser tab and navigated to the couple's retreat resort website. Bungalow 23 was listed as a premium romantic getaway suite, with a king bed, fireplace, and private hot tub. The photos showed rustic luxury, the kind of place that charged $500 a night to help couples reconnect. The reservation system showed availability for the rest of the week, every bungalow except 23. I reached for my phone and dialed the resort's reservation line. "Couples Retreat Resort, this is Madison. How can I help you create your perfect romantic getaway?" "Hi, Madison. I'd like to book a bungalow for tonight through the weekend. Something secluded, if possible." "Absolutely. Let me check our availability. We have Bungalow 18 available, which is very private and has beautiful lake views." "Perfect. I'll take it." I gave her a credit card number and a fake name, David Morrison, an identity I'd created years ago for online purchases I wanted to keep private. The reservation was confirmed within minutes. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, and control. For half a year, I'd been reacting to Vivian's changes, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I could fix our marriage. Now I understood the problem wasn't me. The problem was that my wife was a cheating liar, and she thought I was too stupid to figure it out. I spent the next hour preparing. I packed a small bag with clothes and surveillance equipment, a few devices I'd acquired through my renovation business for security installations. Nothing illegal, just good quality cameras and audio equipment designed for home monitoring. Before leaving, I activated the house's smart lock system and changed all the access codes. I also enabled the security cameras throughout the property and set them to send alerts to my phone for any movement. If Vivian decided to come home unexpectedly, I'd know about it immediately. The drive to the Berkshires gave me time to think. I wasn't sure what I planned to accomplish at the resort. Part of me wanted to confront them directly, to walk up to Bungalow 23 and knock on the door. But that would be emotional, reactive, stupid. Better to observe first. Gather information, understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made any moves. The couple's retreat resort was everything the website had promised. Rustic buildings scattered around a pristine lake, connected by winding paths lit with soft lanterns. I checked in at the main lodge, where a cheerful clerk handed me the keys to Bungalow 18. "You're going to love it here," she said with a practiced smile. "The autumn foliage is just spectacular this time of year, perfect for romantic walks." "I'm sure it will be," I replied, managing a smile of my own. Bungalow 18 was indeed private, tucked into a grove of maple trees about 200 yards from the main path. More importantly, it had a clear sightline to Bungalow 23 across a small meadow. I unpacked my equipment methodically, setting up a camera with a telephoto lens near the window. The device was motion-activated and would capture both photos and video automatically. I also positioned a directional microphone that could pick up conversations from a considerable distance. Then I settled in to wait. At 7:30 p.m., I got my first clear view of Gavin Price in person. He emerged from Bungalow 23 wearing khakis and a polo shirt, looking every inch the successful consultant on vacation. He was taller than I'd expected, with a kind of artificial tan that came from expensive salons. 5 minutes later, Vivian appeared. Seeing your wife with another man is supposed to be devastating, I'd always imagined. Instead, I felt detached, clinical. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, something that hugged her figure in ways her usual professional attire never did. Her hair was styled differently too, softer and more feminine than her typical severe bob. She looked happy, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. They walked hand in hand toward the main lodge, presumably for dinner. I waited until they were out of sight, then made my move. The lock on Bungalow 23 was a simple electronic keypad, the kind used in thousands of hotels. I'd installed similar systems dozens of times and knew their vulnerabilities. A small device from my toolkit connected to the lock's data port, cycling through common codes until it found the right combination. The door opened with a soft click. Inside, I found the evidence of their affair scattered across every surface. Vivian's suitcase was open on a chair, revealing lingerie I'd never seen. Gavin's expensive cologne filled the air. 2 wine glasses sat on the bedside table, along with an open bottle of champagne that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. But it was the paperwork on the desk that made my hands shake with rage. Financial documents, bank statements, copies of invoices from my renovation business, with notes written in Vivian's handwriting analyzing cash flow and profit margins. A folder labeled Whitman Construction Assets contained photographs of my equipment, my truck, even the deed to our house. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note in Vivian's script. E's business grossed $340K last year. Divorce settlement should be 50% minimum plus alimony. House value estimated at $480K. Total potential $650K plus. I photographed every document with my phone, my anger growing with each page. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated financial takedown. The sound of voices outside sent me scrambling for the door. I slipped out just as Vivian and Gavin rounded the corner, returning from their romantic dinner. I made it back to my own bungalow without being seen, my heart hammering in my chest. But as I reviewed the photos I'd taken, my pulse steadied. Now I understood exactly what I was dealing with. This wasn't a crime of passion or a marriage that had simply grown cold. This was premeditated betrayal, planned and executed with the precision of a business transaction. Vivian thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I spent the night in Bungalow 18 reviewing everything I'd discovered, building a timeline of Vivian's deception. The financial documents painted a clear picture. She and Gavin had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every late-night work session, every mysterious phone call, every new piece of expensive clothing. It all fit into a pattern of systematic preparation for divorce. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. At 6 a.m., I watched through my telephoto lens as Gavin emerged from Bungalow 23 for his morning run. He was the type who probably posted his workout stats on social media, all image and no substance. I'd known guys like him in high school, smooth talkers who'd never done a day of real work in their lives. 20 minutes later, Vivian appeared on the small deck, wearing a silk robe that definitely hadn't come from our shared closet. She looked content, sipping coffee and gazing out at the lake like she didn't have a care in the world. My phone buzzed with a text message. Dad had a better night. Might be able to come home tomorrow instead of staying the whole week. Miss you. V? The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She was sitting half-dressed in another man's vacation rental, planning to steal half my life's work, and she had the audacity to text me about missing me. I typed back, "Take all the time you need. Dad's health comes first." But even as I sent the message, I was formulating a plan. I packed up my surveillance equipment and checked out of the resort, but I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to an electronics store in the next town and purchased several items. A small GPS tracker identical to the one already on Vivian's car, a voice-activated recording device, and a wireless camera system designed for home security monitoring. My next stop was the public library, where I used their computers to research Gavin Price more thoroughly. What I found was interesting. His consulting business was legitimate, but it was also struggling. Several negative reviews on professional websites complained about missed deadlines and cost overruns. His expensive lifestyle was apparently funded by credit rather than actual success. I also discovered that he'd been married until 18 months ago. His ex-wife had filed for divorce, citing financial irresponsibility and emotional abandonment. The settlement had apparently left him with significant alimony obligations. So Gavin wasn't just stealing my wife, he was planning to use her divorce settlement to solve his own financial problems. It was almost admirable in its cynicism. By the time I returned home that afternoon, I had a comprehensive plan. The first step was securing my assets. I spent 2 hours on the phone with my business attorney and accountant, restructuring my company's finances and moving personal assets into accounts that would be harder for Vivian to access. I also changed the passwords on all our shared accounts and removed her access to my business banking. The second step was documentation. I uploaded all the photos from Bungalow 23 to a secure cloud storage account, along with screenshots of Vivian's text conversations and a detailed timeline of her lies. I also prepared a folder of financial records showing the true value of my business, significantly higher than the documents I'd found suggested they knew about. The third step was the most satisfying. I began laying traps. That evening, Vivian called right on schedule. "Hi, honey. Dad's doing much better today. The new medication seems to be helping." "That's wonderful news," I said, settling into my office chair. "I'm so glad you're there to help him through this." "Me too. Listen, I was thinking I might stay the full week after all. The nurses think consistency is important, and I've already taken the time off work." "Of course, whatever Dad needs. You're the best, Eli. I don't know what I'd do without you." The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. "Just take care of yourself, okay? And give my regards to everyone there." After she hung up, I activated the first of my traps. Using the home automation system, I programmed the house to simulate my normal routine. Lights turning on and off in different rooms, the television activating at my usual times, even the coffee maker starting each morning. To any outside observer, it would appear I was home and following my regular schedule. But I wouldn't be home. I had work to do. The next morning, I drove to Gavin's apartment building in Boston. The address had been easy to find through public records, and the building's security was laughably inadequate. I waited in the parking garage until I saw his BMW leave for work, then approached his vehicle. The GPS tracker attached to his undercarriage in seconds. I also took photos of his license plate and noted several scratches and dings that would help me identify the car from a distance. My next stop was Vivian's office building. I'd visited her workplace dozens of times over the years for company parties and spouse events, so the security guards recognized me and waved me through without question. "Eli, what brings you by?" asked Jennifer, Vivian's assistant. "Viv's not here. She's taking care of her father this week." "I know," I said with my most charming smile. "I actually wanted to surprise her. She mentioned that Gavin Price from the consulting firm has been such a help with her project. I thought I'd drop by his office and thank him personally, maybe take him to lunch." Jennifer's expression shifted slightly, a micro-expression that confirmed my suspicions. She knew about the affair. "Oh, well, Gavin's not here either. He's taking some personal time this week." "What a coincidence," I said. "Well, maybe next week then." As I left the building, I made a mental note to add Jennifer to my list of people who'd been complicit in Vivian's deception. The betrayal wasn't limited to my wife. It extended to an entire network of people who'd watched it happen and said nothing. That afternoon, I implemented the second phase of my plan. Using a prepaid phone and a voice-disguising app, I called the couple's retreat resort. "Hi, this is David Morrison. I stayed in Bungalow 18 earlier this week, and I think I left my watch in the room. Would it be possible for someone to check?" "Of course, Mr. Morrison. Let me transfer you to housekeeping." While I was on hold, I activated a second line and called back. "Couple's Retreat Resort. This is Madison." "Hi, Madison. This is Tom Price. My brother Gavin is staying in one of your bungalows this week. I think it's number 23. There's been a family emergency, and I need to get a message to him urgently." "Oh, my." "Of course. Let me connect you to that bungalow right away." The phone rang 4 times before Vivian answered. "Hello?" I hung up immediately, but I'd confirmed what I needed to know. They were still at the resort, still living their fantasy while I prepared their reality. That evening, I received another text from Vivian. "Dad's asking about you. Says to tell you the Red Sox better win tonight, or he's switching to the Yankees." The message was perfectly crafted to seem authentic, complete with the kind of joke her father might actually make. But I knew her father had advanced dementia and hadn't followed baseball in 3 years. I texted back, "Tell him I said the Sox are looking good this year. Love you." But as I sent the message, I was already preparing the next phase of my plan. The following morning, I drove back to the resort, but this time I didn't check in. Instead, I parked at a hiking trail about a mile away and walked through the woods to a position overlooking the main lodge. Through binoculars, I watched Vivian and Gavin enjoy their breakfast on the restaurant's outdoor patio. They looked like any other couple on vacation, holding hands, sharing food, laughing at each other's jokes. It would have been touching if it weren't so nauseating. At 10 a.m., they left the lodge and walked toward the resort's spa. I used the opportunity to approach Gavin's BMW in the parking lot. I didn't damage the vehicle. That would have been criminal. Instead, I loosened the valve stems on all 4 tires, letting out just enough air to make them noticeably low, but not flat. I also placed a small magnetic device under the rear bumper that would emit a high-pitched whine at speeds over 30 miles per hour. Then I returned to my observation post and waited. 2 hours later, Gavin and Vivian emerged from the spa looking relaxed and pampered. They approached the BMW, and I watched through binoculars as Gavin noticed the low tires. Even from a distance, I could see his confusion and frustration. They spent 20 minutes at the resort's front desk, presumably arranging for roadside assistance. I used that time to slip away and drive home, satisfied that I'd introduced the first crack in their perfect vacation. That afternoon, Vivian called earlier than usual. "Eli, the strangest thing happened. Someone let the air out of the tires on the car I borrowed from Dad's neighbor. Can you believe that?" "That's weird," I agreed. "Maybe just a prank by some local kids?" "Maybe. Anyway, it's been handled. The resort staff was very helpful." "I'm glad. How's Dad doing today?" "Much better. Actually, I think I might be able to come home tomorrow after all. I miss our bed." The casual way she lied was almost artistic. "I miss you too. The house feels empty without you." After she hung up, I sat in my office staring at the lake. Tomorrow, Vivian would come home expecting to find her loving, clueless husband waiting with open arms. Instead, she was going to find something very different. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my attorney. The subject line read, "Divorce preparation, urgent." It was time to stop playing defense and go on the attack. But first, I had one more surprise to arrange for Vivian's homecoming. I spent the evening reviewing the security footage from our house's cameras, noting the patterns of when neighbors walked their dogs, when delivery trucks passed by, when Mrs. Kettle from next door checked her mailbox. Our street was quiet and predictable, which would make Vivian's return tomorrow very public and very memorable. I also prepared a special welcome home gift, a printed folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd gathered, along with a detailed financial analysis of our marriage's true worth. The folder was wrapped in elegant paper and topped with a bow like a present, because in a way, it was a present. I was giving Vivian the gift of honesty, something she'd forgotten how to give herself. My phone buzzed with one final text of the day. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I have so much to tell you about Dad's progress. Love you always. V." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed my reply. "I can't wait either. I have some surprises planned for you, too." As I hit send, I was already looking forward to seeing the expression on her face when she realized the game had changed. Vivian came home at 3:15 p.m. the next day, pulling into our driveway in her Honda with a satisfied smile that disappeared the moment she tried to open the front door. I watched from my office window as she fumbled with her keys, growing increasingly frustrated when the lock wouldn't turn. She tried the keypad next, punching in our anniversary date, then her birthday, then a series of increasingly frantic combinations. Finally, she called my cell phone. "Eli, something's wrong with the locks. I can't get into the house." "That's strange," I said, though I was sitting 20 feet away from her. "Let me come check it out." I took my time walking to the front door, stopping to straighten a picture frame and adjust the thermostat. When I finally opened the door, Vivian was standing on the porch with her suitcase, looking annoyed and slightly suspicious. "The locks weren't working," she said, stepping past me into the foyer. "Weird. They've been fine all week. How's your dad doing?" "Much better, thanks to—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the living room. I'd made some changes while she was away. The furniture had been rearranged, family photos removed from their usual spots, and her collection of decorative candles packed away in boxes that sat conspicuously by the front door. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Just some redecorating. I had a lot of time to think this week while you were gone." She set down her suitcase and walked deeper into the house, noting each change with growing unease. In the kitchen, I'd removed her coffee mug from the cabinet and placed it in a box labeled V's Things. Her favorite throw blanket was folded neatly on top. "Eli, what's going on?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, studying her face. She was good. I had to give her that. The confusion and concern looked genuine. If I didn't know better, I might have believed she was actually puzzled by my behavior. "I've been doing some thinking about our marriage," I said. "About honesty, trust, communication, all those things that make a relationship work." "Okay," she said slowly. "And you decided to redecorate?" "I decided to make some changes, yes, starting with this." I handed her the gift-wrapped folder I'd prepared. She took it hesitantly, as if it might explode. "What is it?" "Open it." She untied the bow with careful fingers, then lifted the lid. I watched her face as she processed the first photograph, a clear shot of her and Gavin holding hands outside Bungalow 23. The color drained from her cheeks, but she kept her composure. She flipped through the rest of the evidence methodically, more photos, copies of their text messages, bank records, the handwritten notes about my assets. When she finished, she set the folder down on the kitchen island and looked at me with what I could only describe as professional calm. "I can explain," she said. "I'm sure you can. You've gotten very good at explanations this past week." "Eli, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, and the sound was harsher than I'd intended. "It looks like my wife spent a week at a couple's resort with another man while lying to me about taking care of her father. It looks like she's been planning to divorce me and take half my business. What part am I misunderstanding?" For the first time, her mask slipped. I saw a flash of the real Vivian, calculating, cold, annoyed at being caught. "You followed me," she said. "You spied on me." "I investigated my wife's suspicious behavior and found exactly what I expected to find. This is illegal. You can't use any of this in court." There it was, the real Vivian. Not the loving wife, not the dutiful daughter, but the corporate strategist already thinking 3 moves ahead. "Actually, I can. Everything here was obtained legally. public places, abandoned property, information freely shared on devices you gave me access to. My attorney was very thorough in explaining the boundaries. Her eyes narrowed. Your attorney? Did you really think I'd discover all this and not take steps to protect myself? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see her recalculating her approach. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more vulnerable. Eli, I know how this looks, but you have to understand. I understand perfectly. You're having an affair with Gavin Price. You've been planning to divorce me for months. You've been analyzing my business assets and our property to maximize your settlement. You've involved your co-workers and friends in covering for you. Did I miss anything? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. She tried a different tactic, moving closer and reaching for my hand. We can work through this. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What happened with Gavin was a mistake, but it's over now. I pulled my hand away. Is it? Because according to these text messages, you're planning to see him again next weekend. Those are old messages. They're dated yesterday. Another slip in her composure. She was realizing that her usual manipulation tactics weren't working, that I'd prepared for every angle she might try. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you to pack your things and leave. This is my house, too. Actually, it's not. I bought this property before we were married, and I've paid for every improvement with income from my business. My attorney assures me you have no claim to it. That's not true. We've been married 12 years. 12 years during which you contributed exactly nothing to the mortgage payments or renovation costs. You kept your income separate, remember? Your idea. I watched her process this information, saw her realize that her own insistence on financial independence had eliminated her claim to the house. You can't just throw me out, she said. I'm not throwing you out. I'm asking you to leave voluntarily. If you prefer, I can file for divorce tomorrow and let the courts sort it out. But I thought you might want to handle this privately. And if I don't leave? Then everyone finds out. Your parents, your co-workers, your friends, Gavin's ex-wife, the partners at his consulting firm. I have enough evidence to destroy both your reputations completely. It was a bluff. I had no intention of publicly humiliating her if I could avoid it. But she didn't know that. You're not this person, she said. You're not vindictive or cruel. This isn't you. You're right. The old me would have blamed himself, would have tried to fix things, would have let you walk all over him while you planned your exit strategy. But the old you wouldn't have spent a week lying to my face while planning to steal half my life's work. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. I'll need time to find a place. You can stay at Gavin's. I'm sure he'll be happy to help. I need my things. Take whatever you want. I'll be in my office. I left her in the kitchen and returned to my office, but I kept the door open so I could hear her moving around the house. She made several phone calls, speaking in hushed tones that carried a note of panic I'd never heard from her before. An hour later, she appeared in my doorway with 2 large suitcases. I'll be back for the rest of my things this weekend. That's fine. Just call first. She hesitated as if she wanted to say something else, then shook her head and walked away. I heard the front door close, then her car starting in the driveway. From my window, I watched her drive away, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no sense of loss. Just a quiet satisfaction that I'd handled the situation cleanly and decisively. My phone rang 20 minutes later. The caller ID showed Gavin's number. Hello, Gavin, I said. We need to talk. His voice was tight with controlled anger. I don't think we do. You've made a serious mistake, Whitman. Vivian is filing harassment charges against you, breaking into our room, following us, threatening us. I haven't threatened anyone, and I didn't break into anything. Hotel security will show that I used my own key card to enter my own room. Bungalow 18, if you want to check. There was a pause. You were staying at the resort? Lovely place. Very romantic. I can see why you chose it. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Vivian will file for divorce, we'll negotiate a settlement, and you two can live happily ever after on whatever money she gets. Just remember that I know exactly what you're worth, Gavin. Your business is failing, you're behind on alimony payments to your ex-wife, and your credit cards are maxed out. Vivian's divorce settlement is your retirement plan. How did you... I told you, I'm thorough. I hung up before he could respond. That evening, I sat on my deck overlooking the lake, drinking a beer and watching the sun set through the autumn trees. The house felt different without Vivian, not empty, but peaceful, like a weight had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. You haven't won anything. This is just the beginning. V. I deleted the message without responding. Whatever game Vivian thought she was playing, I was already 3 moves ahead. But as I sat there in the gathering darkness, I realized she was right about one thing. This was just the beginning. Vivian wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and Gavin had too much invested in their relationship to walk away quietly. They would try to strike back. The question was how, and how badly they would underestimate me when they did. I finished my beer and went inside to prepare for whatever came next. The counterattack began 3 days later with a visit from Detective Martinez of the Millfield Police Department. I was in my workshop behind the house, installing new hinges on a cabinet door, when I heard the car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I watched a middle-aged Hispanic woman in a rumpled suit get out of an unmarked sedan and approach my front door. I gave her time to knock and wait, then walked around to meet her at the front of the house. Mr. Whitman, Detective Martinez, Millfield PD. I'd like to ask you a few questions about a complaint we've received. Of course. Would you like to come inside? She followed me into the living room, noting the boxes of Vivian's things that were still stacked by the front door. Your wife filed a complaint alleging harassment and stalking behavior. She claims you followed her to a resort, broke into her room, and have been threatening her and her friend. I nodded thoughtfully. Would you like to see the evidence that proves those allegations are false? Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. You have evidence? I have receipts, security footage, phone records, and documentation that shows I was a registered guest at the resort in question, staying in my own room, which I paid for with my own credit card. I also have evidence that my wife has been lying about her whereabouts and conducting an extramarital affair. I retrieved a folder from my office and handed it to her. She flipped through it methodically, her expression growing more skeptical with each page. This is quite comprehensive, she said finally. I'm a detail-oriented person, Detective. When my wife started lying to me about caring for her sick father while actually vacationing with another man, I documented everything. These photos were taken in public areas, every single one. The resort's main paths, the restaurant patio, the parking lot. I never entered their room or any private space. Detective Martinez closed the folder and handed it back to me. Mr. Whitman, I have to ask, are you planning to harm your wife or Mr. Price? Absolutely not. I want them to leave me alone so I can move on with my life. No contact with either of them since your wife left? None initiated by me. Mr. Price called me once, but I ended the conversation quickly and haven't spoken to him since. She stood up, looking satisfied. I don't see any evidence of criminal behavior here, Mr. Whitman. It looks like a messy divorce situation, but that's a civil matter. After she left, I called my attorney. They're trying to establish a pattern of harassment, he explained. If they can get a restraining order, it limits your ability to gather evidence and makes you look like the aggressor in divorce proceedings. What's our next move? We file first. I'll have divorce papers ready by tomorrow morning. We control the narrative from the beginning. But Vivian's legal gambit was just the opening move. The real attack came that afternoon when I arrived at a job site to find my client, Mrs. Henderson, waiting with an uncomfortable expression. Eli, I'm sorry, but I have to ask. Is everything okay at home? What do you mean? Someone called me this morning, a woman who said she was concerned about your mental state. She said you'd been acting erratically, following people, making threats. She thought I should know before letting you continue work on my house. My hands tightened on my tool bag. What exactly did this person say? She said you were going through a difficult divorce and that you might not be stable. She suggested I might want to hire someone else to finish the kitchen. Mrs. Henderson, I've been working on your house for 6 weeks. Have I ever given you any reason to question my professionalism or stability? No, of course not. That's why I wanted to talk to you directly instead of just canceling the contract. I set down my tools and looked her in the eye. My wife has been having an affair. I discovered it and asked her to leave our house. She's apparently decided to try to destroy my business as retaliation. The woman who called you was either my wife or someone acting on her behalf. Mrs. Henderson's expression softened. I thought it might be something like that. The caller seemed to know an awful lot about your personal business. I can provide references from every client I've worked with in the past 5 years. I can also show you the police report from yesterday, where the harassment allegations against me were investigated and dismissed. That won't be necessary, Eli. I've seen your work, and I've seen how you interact with my family. I'm not going to let some anonymous phone call override my own judgment. But as I worked on Mrs. Henderson's kitchen that day, my phone rang 3 more times. Other clients, all reporting similar calls questioning my stability and professionalism. By evening, I'd lost 2 jobs and had to spend an hour each with 3 other clients, reassuring them and providing documentation of the harassment campaign being waged against me. Vivian was playing dirty, but she was also making a crucial mistake. Every phone call, every false allegation, every attempt to sabotage my business was creating a paper trail that would work in my favor during divorce proceedings. That night, I sat in my office and planned my response. If Vivian wanted to escalate this into total warfare, I was prepared to give her exactly what she was asking for. I started with Gavin's business. A few strategic phone calls to his clients expressing concern about his ability to focus on their projects while dealing with a messy affair and divorce situation. I didn't lie or make false accusations. I simply shared publicly available information about his personal life and let his clients draw their own conclusions. Within 24 hours, 2 of his consulting contracts had been terminated. Next, I turned my attention to Vivian's social circle. Her best friend Cassie had been covering for the affair from the beginning, helping to create alibis and deflect suspicion. I'd always found Cassie insufferable, a gossipy, self-centered woman who thrived on drama. I called Cassie's husband, Robert, whom I'd known for years. "Rob, it's Eli Whitman. I wanted you to hear this from me before you heard it from someone else. Vivian's been having an affair, and Cassie has been helping her cover it up." "Jesus, Eli, I'm sorry, man. Are you sure?" "I have photos, text messages, the works. Cassie has been providing alibis, helping arrange meetings, the whole thing. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just thought you should know that your wife has been lying to you about her activities for months." I could hear the anger building in his voice. "Can you send me the evidence?" "I'll email you everything that involves Cassie." 20 minutes later, I heard shouting from the direction of Cassie's house, 3 streets over. The sound carried clearly across the lake in the still autumn air. But my most effective counterstrike was also the most subtle. I created a fake social media account and began posting in local community groups about a cheating scandal involving unnamed individuals from our town. I didn't mention names or identifying details, but I included just enough information for people to start speculating. Within hours, the post had dozens of comments from neighbors and acquaintances trying to guess who was involved. Someone mentioned seeing Vivian with an unknown man at a restaurant in the next town over. Another person recalled that she'd been acting strange at the last neighborhood barbecue. The speculation built on itself, creating a wave of gossip that spread through our social circle like wildfire. By the end of the week, Vivian's affair was the worst-kept secret in Millfield. But Vivian wasn't finished either. On Friday morning, I woke to find my truck's tires slashed and "Stalker" spray-painted across the windshield. I called the police, filed a report, and had the security footage from my cameras ready when Detective Martinez arrived. "Interesting," she said, reviewing the footage on my laptop. "The vandalism occurred at 2:17 a.m., but your cameras didn't capture who did it." "No, but they did capture this." I showed her footage from an hour earlier, showing a dark sedan driving slowly past my house with its headlights off. The license plate wasn't visible, but the car's profile matched Gavin's BMW. "I'll follow up on this," she said. "In the meantime, you might want to consider installing additional security measures." "Already planned," I said. That afternoon, I had a professional security company install floodlights, additional cameras, and motion sensors around my property. I also arranged for a friend in the alarm business to monitor the system 24/7. If Vivian and Gavin wanted to play games, I was going to make sure every move they made was recorded and documented. But as I stood in my driveway that evening, looking at my vandalized truck, I realized the conflict was entering a new phase. The legal maneuvering and social warfare had been relatively civilized. Now it was getting personal and destructive. I thought about calling my attorney, maybe even calling Detective Martinez to discuss protective measures. But another part of me, a part I didn't entirely recognize, was looking forward to seeing how far they were willing to push things, because I was ready to push back harder than they could possibly imagine. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is just the beginning. Back off, or it gets worse." I typed back, "Looking forward to it." And I realized, somewhat to my surprise, that I meant it. The escalation I'd been expecting came on a rainy Thursday night in the form of headlights in my driveway at 11:30 p.m. I was in my office, reviewing financial documents for the divorce proceedings, when my security system alerted me to movement outside. Through the cameras, I watched Vivian's Honda pull up to the house, followed by Gavin's BMW. They sat in their cars for several minutes, apparently discussing strategy. Then Vivian got out and approached the front door while Gavin remained in his vehicle, an engine running. She still had her keys, but I'd changed the locks again after the vandalism incident. I watched her try the door, then move to the back of the house toward the sliding glass door that led to the deck. That's when I made my move. I slipped out through the basement door and circled around to the boathouse, where I had a clear view of the deck. Vivian was using a crowbar to pry at the sliding door, technically breaking and entering, though she probably thought her status as my wife gave her legal cover. The door gave way with a sharp crack, and she disappeared inside the house. Through the windows, I could see her moving quickly through the rooms, gathering items and stuffing them into garbage bags. But she wasn't just taking her belongings. I watched her go into my office and start rifling through my desk drawers, photographing documents with her phone. That's when I called the police. 911, what's your emergency? This is Eli Whitman at 47 Lakeshore Drive. Someone has broken into my house and is currently inside, stealing documents and personal property. Are you in the house now, sir? No, I'm outside in a safe location. The intruder appears to be searching for financial records. Units are on the way. Stay on the line and maintain your distance from the house. I could hear sirens in the distance when Vivian finally emerged from the house, carrying 2 garbage bags and what looked like my laptop. She ran toward Gavin's car, but he was already pulling away, apparently having decided that sticking around for a police encounter wasn't worth the risk. Vivian stood in my driveway, holding her stolen goods, watching Gavin's taillights disappear down the street. The betrayal on her face was almost comical. Apparently, honor among thieves only went so far. The police arrived 30 seconds later. That's her, I told Detective Martinez, who had responded to the call. My estranged wife, Vivian Whitman. She broke in through the back door and stole documents from my office. Ma'am, I need you to put down the bags and step away from the vehicle, Martinez called out. Vivian's shoulders sagged in defeat. She set down the bags and raised her hands, the picture of wounded innocence. This is my house, too, she protested. I was just getting my things. Ma'am, do you have legal permission to be here? I'm his wife. That doesn't give you the right to break into the property after you've been asked to leave, Martinez explained. And according to the restraining order you filed, you're supposed to maintain distance from Mr. Whitman. The irony was perfect. Vivian's own legal maneuvering had created a situation where her presence at my house violated her own restraining order. As Martinez cuffed her, Vivian looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Eli. Yes, it is, I replied. But I was wrong. The real confrontation came 3 days later, when Gavin finally worked up the courage to face me directly. I was at the marina, having my boat winterized for the season, when he approached. He looked haggard, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, moving with the desperate energy of a man whose carefully constructed life was falling apart. We need to talk, he said. No, we don't. You've destroyed everything. Vivian's in jail, my business is ruined, our friends won't return our calls. Your friends were never your friends. They were just people who tolerated you because it was socially convenient. He stepped closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. You think you're so smart, don't you? The clever little contractor who outsmarted the sophisticated city folk. I think I'm a man who caught his wife cheating and responded appropriately. Appropriately? He laughed bitterly. You've waged a campaign of systematic destruction against 2 people whose only crime was falling in love. Your only crime was adultery, theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and vandalism. But sure, let's call it love. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. I've been recording this conversation. Threatening language, intimidation, harassment. I've got enough here to put you away. I looked at the phone, then back at his face. Gavin, you're not recording anything. Your phone isn't even turned on. He looked down at the device, confused, and I realized he was more intoxicated than I'd initially thought. You're pathetic, I said. Vivian's in jail because she broke into my house and stole my property. Your business is failing because you're incompetent and your clients figured it out. Your friends abandoned you because you're a liar and a cheat. None of that is my fault. I loved her, he said, and for the first time he sounded genuinely broken. No, you loved the idea of her divorce settlement paying off your debts. He swung at me then, a clumsy telegraphed punch that I avoided easily. He stumbled, off balance, and I grabbed his arm to keep him from falling into the lake. Go home, Gavin. Sober up, pack your things, and leave town. There's nothing left for you here. He jerked his arm away and stumbled toward the parking lot. I watched him get into his BMW and drive away, weaving slightly as he navigated the winding marina road. I should have felt victorious. My enemies were defeated, my marriage was over, and I was free to start fresh. Instead, I felt empty. That evening, I sat on my deck watching the sunset and trying to figure out what came next. The house felt different now, not peaceful, but hollow. The silence that had once seemed like relief now felt like loneliness. My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. The caller ID showed my attorney's number. Eli, I have news about Vivian's situation. What kind of news? She's agreed to a plea bargain, guilty to breaking and entering, restitution for damages, and a clean divorce settlement with no alimony claims. What's the catch? No catch. She wants this over as much as you do. The public humiliation, the jail time, losing her job. She's ready to surrender. And Gavin? Gavin Price has declared bankruptcy and moved back to Ohio to live with his parents. His consulting business is finished. I hung up the phone and stared out at the lake. In the distance, I could see lights from other houses, other families going about their evening routines, normal people living normal lives, unaware of the small war that had been fought and won in their quiet neighborhood. I'd gotten everything I wanted. Justice, vindication, revenge. So why did I feel so empty? The answer came to me as I watched a pair of loons swimming near the shore, their haunting calls echoing across the water. I'd won the war, but I'd lost something essential in the process. The man who'd started this journey had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best of people. The man sitting on this deck was harder, more cynical, more alone. But maybe that was the price of wisdom. Maybe you couldn't learn to protect yourself without losing some essential innocence. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. V. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. But as I sat there in the gathering darkness, I realized I was okay with that. I'd rather be alone and honest than together and living a lie. The loons called again across the water, their voices carrying a note of wild freedom that spoke to something deep in my chest. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life. Tonight, I would sit here and listen to the lake and remember who I used to be before I learned how cruel the world could be. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was an honest one. And after months of lies and deception, honesty felt like enough. At 3 weeks after Vivian's arrest, I thought the war was over. I was wrong. The final battle began on a Saturday morning when I discovered that someone had been spreading rumors about me throughout the local business community. Potential clients were canceling contracts, suppliers were demanding cash payments instead of extending credit, and my banker had called to discuss concerns about my business practices. The rumors were subtle but devastating. Questions about my mental stability, suggestions that my divorce had made me unreliable, whispers about inappropriate behavior toward female clients. Nothing actionable, nothing I could sue over, but enough to poison my reputation in a small town where word of mouth was everything. It took me 2 days to trace the campaign back to its source. Cassie, Vivian's former best friend, who had apparently decided to wage a guerrilla war on behalf of her imprisoned friend. The irony was perfect. Cassie's own marriage had imploded when I'd revealed her role in covering up Vivian's affair. But instead of accepting responsibility, she decided to blame me for her problems. I could have fought back through legal channels, could have hired a private investigator to document her harassment campaign, could have filed complaints with the police. But I was tired of playing defense. It was time to end this permanently. I spent a week preparing, gathering intelligence on everyone who had been involved in the conspiracy against me. Cassie, obviously, but also Jennifer from Vivian's office, Tom, Gavin's cousin who had helped provide alibis, and several other mutual friends who had known about the affair and said nothing. Then I planned an event that would settle all accounts simultaneously. The Millfield Business Association held its monthly networking mixer at the Marina restaurant every third Thursday. It was the kind of small-town gathering where everyone who mattered in the local economy came to see and be seen, to make deals and spread gossip. I hadn't attended one of these mixers in over a year, but this month I made an exception. I arrived early and set up in a corner booth with a clear view of the entire restaurant. I'd brought a laptop, a portable projector, and a folder full of evidence that I'd been collecting for months. The crowd began filtering in around 6 p.m. Local business owners, real estate agents, bank managers, town council members. About 50 people total, representing the economic and social elite of our small community. Cassie arrived at 6:30, wearing a black dress and an expression of wounded dignity that she'd been cultivating since her divorce. She made a point of telling anyone who would listen about the harassment campaign that had destroyed her marriage and ruined her life. At 7 p.m., I stood up and tapped my knife against my water glass. "Excuse me, everyone. I'd like to say a few words." The conversation died as 50 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I could see confusion on some faces, curiosity on others, and outright hostility on Cassie's. Many of you have heard rumors about my recent divorce and the circumstances surrounding it. Tonight, I'd like to set the record straight. I activated the projector, and the first image appeared on the restaurant's blank wall, a photo of Vivian and Gavin holding hands outside Bungalow 23. 6 months ago, I discovered that my wife was having an affair with a financial consultant named Gavin Price. What I initially thought was a simple case of adultery turned out to be something much more complex. The next slide showed copies of the financial documents I'd found in their room, Vivian's analysis of my business assets, and her handwritten notes about divorce strategy. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plan to destroy my marriage, steal my business assets, and leave me financially ruined. A murmur ran through the crowd. Several people were taking photos of the projected evidence with their phones. But the conspiracy didn't end with my wife and her lover. It extended to a network of friends and associates who helped them cover their tracks. The next slide showed screenshots of text messages between Vivian and Cassie, planning alibis and coordinating lies. Cassie Morrison didn't just know about the affair. She actively participated in it. She provided false alibis, helped arrange secret meetings, and even offered her own home as a meeting place when hotel rooms weren't available. Cassie shot to her feet. "This is slander. You can't... Everything you're seeing is documented evidence, Cassie. Text messages, photos, financial records, all obtained legally and verified by multiple sources." The next slide showed Jennifer's email exchanges with Vivian, discussing how to coordinate Gavin's visits to the office with times when I was unlikely to drop by unexpectedly. Jennifer Walsh from Hartwell Associates knew about the affair from the beginning and actively helped conceal it. She scheduled fake meetings, provided cover stories, and even helped Gavin gain access to confidential information about my business. I could see Jennifer near the bar, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Tom Price, Gavin's cousin, provided financial support and legal advice throughout the conspiracy. He helped Gavin hide assets from his ex-wife while planning to use my divorce settlement to pay his own debts. The final slide was a timeline showing how the conspiracy had developed over 8 months, with dates, locations, and evidence of each participant's involvement. These people didn't just betray my trust. They betrayed the trust of this entire community. They lied to their spouses, their co-workers, their friends. They participated in a criminal conspiracy that included fraud, theft, and perjury. The room was completely silent now. I could see shock, disgust, and fascination on the faces around me. Some of you have heard rumors about my mental state, my business practices, my reliability as a contractor. Those rumors were started and spread by the same people who participated in the conspiracy against me. They're trying to destroy my reputation because they can't face the consequences of their own actions. I closed the laptop, and the projector went dark. I wanted you to hear the truth directly from me, with evidence to support every claim. Thank you for your time. The silence stretched for another 10 seconds, then erupted into chaos. Cassie was screaming at me from across the room, calling me every name she could think of. Jennifer had fled toward the bathroom, probably to throw up. Several people were crowding around my table, asking to see more evidence. But the most satisfying reaction came from Robert Morrison, Cassie's ex-husband, who walked over to where she was still shouting and said quietly, "Now everyone knows what kind of person you really are." The evening's aftermath was everything I'd hoped for and more. By Sunday morning, the story had spread throughout the town. The photos from the mixer had been shared on social media, the evidence I'd presented had been screenshotted and forwarded, and everyone who had been involved in the conspiracy was facing social and professional consequences. Cassie's real estate license was suspended pending an ethics investigation. Jennifer was fired from her job. Tom Price's law practice lost 3 major clients, but more importantly, the rumors about me stopped immediately. By Monday, I had 2 new clients who specifically said they were hiring me because they respected how I'd handled the situation. "You could have destroyed those people privately," one of them said. "The fact that you gave them months to come clean before going public shows real character." I didn't tell him that I'd gone public because it was the most efficient way to end the harassment campaign. Sometimes people prefer their heroes to be more noble than they actually are. That evening, I sat on my deck with a beer, watching the sunset and reflecting on the past few months. The war was finally over. My enemies were defeated, my reputation was restored, and my business was stronger than ever. But victory felt different than I'd expected. There was satisfaction, yes, but also a deep weariness. I'd won by being smarter, more ruthless, and more prepared than my opponents. But in the process, I'd become someone I didn't entirely recognize. The man who had received that first text message from Vivian would never have planned and executed the kind of systematic destruction I'd unleashed over the past months. He'd been trusting, forgiving, willing to assume the best about people. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder and more cynical. Someone who understood that the world was full of people who would lie, cheat, and steal if they thought they could get away with it. It wasn't necessarily a bad trade. The new me was stronger, more independent, less likely to be taken advantage of. But I mourned the loss of the old me's innocence. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I thought it might be another attempt at communication from Vivian, but the number belonged to my brother Jack. "Saw the video from the mixer online. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Want to grab dinner this week? I smiled and typed back, Sure, but you're buying. As I hit send, I realized that maybe the old me wasn't completely gone. The capacity for friendship, for humor, for simple pleasures, those things were still there, buried under layers of hard-won wisdom, but not destroyed. Maybe that was enough. Maybe you didn't have to choose between being naive and being alone. Maybe you could be smart and careful while still leaving room for the people who deserved your trust. The loons called across the lake, their voices carrying the wild freedom that had spoken to me months ago. But tonight, they sounded different. Not lonely, but independent. Not isolated, but self-sufficient. I raised my beer in a toast to the empty air. Here's to new beginnings, I said aloud. The lake stretched out before me, dark and peaceful under the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new people who might prove worthy of trust. But tonight, I was content to sit here and enjoy the silence of a war finally won. The story was over. The rest was just living.